Welcome back. Financially troubled municipalities who collectively owe water boards over 20 billion rand are calling for debt relief from national government. The Water and Sanitation Department says each request will be considered individually. For more on this, let's speak to Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, David Mahlobo. Mr. Mahlobo, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Water, an increasing issue for municipalities. Now they're asking for this debt relief. Do we have the money for it?
Thank you very much, Masa, to you and to your viewers. We are having some difficulties because there's been an escalation of the debts that is owed to and by municipalities, especially to issues of ESCOM and us as the water boards. But there are also the water boards, if they are not paid, like indicating the figure of above 23 billion, they are unable to pay the Department of Water and Sanitation. That will threaten the issues of the water security. We must indicate that since Peme Majodina, as our minister, myself and the Deputy Minister Sitlul, we've engaged with the Premier of the Northern Cape, the Premier of the Free State, of all those municipalities that are affected, especially that are serviced by this Val Central Water Board. We also engage with the Northwest, especially on the question of Mahalis. We also dealt with the question of eThekwini and the other municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal with their Premier. Our attitude is that the user pay principle must be respected. Municipalities must enter into agreements with the water boards and they must not be in a position to default. We know that some of these municipalities have been defaulting on these accounts. An example, a municipality like the one in Belcom Machabeng owes us more than 6 billion rands, which is one of the astronomical figures that is there. But at the very same time, we don't only want the municipalities to pay the water board. We're also saying that let's work with National Treasury, let's work with SALGA and COPTA, look at mechanism, for an example, of ring-fencing the money from the water sales. So the money from the water sales, it can go back to invest in infrastructure. Municipalities can sweat the asset. They will also be able to provide citizens with water uninterrupted. When it is uninterrupted, the citizens will be able to pay. But some of these municipalities are actually very, very insolvent. They are not going to be in a position to pay. Therefore, we need to look at the possibilities of either cancelling some of the debts, but under certain conditions, using the very same model that was done around certain issues of the ESCOM debt. But these are some of the reforms to say we'll want them to pay, but at the very same time want them to have a good credit control, provide services, because if they provide quality services, citizens are going to pay.
Mr. Mahlobo, do you feel that these reforms will work? Because as you mentioned as well, some of these municipalities have been defaulting consistently for a number of years. So in essence, there's been a culture of non-payment. Now, when they do receive this debt relief, are these reforms strong enough to ensure that they don't slip back into this culture of non-payment?
Master, there are matters that we call them objective conditions and subjective condition. On the objective condition, local government in the main is struggling because of issues of the economy, the issues that many people are unable to pay for services. Then there's an issue of the fiscal regime, where most of the money is given to national and provinces. Therefore, there are discussions to ensure that at least that particular matter must be addressed. The subjective issues, Masa, is that there are issues of leadership, where some leaders in municipalities have made a choice to not make the right decision. For an example, of not ring-fencing the budget from water sales. That money from the water sales, they will be able to attend to their matters of infrastructure, attend to water leaks, the pipes that are old. Then they will ensure that they put matters, get citizens to be able to pay, because if they put the proper billing system, municipalities are going to pay, communities are going to pay. But at the very same time, if you get money from water sales, you use it for miscellaneous. you don't ring-fence it, is being indecisive, and it caused some of these problems where some of these issues, these water boards we have, they will not be able to pay the salaries for their employees. They will not be able to pay ESCOM for pumping the water into our treatment system and the distribution network. But the water that we must provide, it must be fit for use. We'll run out of chemicals if then we don't work together as a collective. But at the very same time, there are issues of citizens where the consumption levels of South Africans of liters per person per day is above the world average of 173 liters per person per day. We are running more than around 280 liters per person per day. Our relationship with water must change. We must conserve water. We must use water sparingly. But those who can afford to pay, they must be able to pay for services by municipalities so that municipalities can pay us. Those who are unable to pay, the water securities network that government gave of certain free basic water that is given to communities, we must give it to them. But if they start to use beyond what they are being given, municipalities must apply their bylaws, ensure that they too, they will have to pay for the water if there's wastages.
A little earlier, Deputy Minister, you were mentioning some of the provinces that you've engaged with as well that have some of those problem municipalities. Now, 2 of the country's water boards, which service 6 of the provinces that you mentioned as well, they're basically on the verge of bankruptcy. So it's already a dire situation that we find ourselves in here when there is no money anyway that you also speak of to give to pay from the municipality. Where does that leave the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency? That bill was drafted in 2021. Where are we with that now? And how will that help with such situations?
Those matters, Masa, we should separate them. The National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency, our president has signed the bill into law. Minister Majodina and ourselves were working on a roadmap. What it will do, it will bring our Trans-Caledon Tunnel Authority, the one that was instrumental in the building of Lesotho Phase 1, the Phase 2, that went into the market. They got the money from the private sector so that we can build dams, we can build these canals, because those are the matters of water infrastructure security. And we have a very good balance sheet in terms of the assets that we have. We'll be able to proceed with that one, including other options of bringing the private sector on the issues of funding, whether we do concessions, whether we do build, own, and operate and transfer. But when it comes to water boards, they will still be responsible for the bulk water system. In other words, they will receive the water from our dams that the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency will be owning and managing on behalf of the nation. Then they will treat it, then they will distribute it to municipalities. The municipalities, they will have to be able to change how they run the water business. It must be run as a ring-fence unity in a form of a trading entity, where there's a clear board, they have enough qualified personnel. Then they build the asset base of that particular asset. Then they can be in a position to have a performance contract. Then that can be able to look at this infrastructure. Whatever that comes out of that ring-fence unit, whether you do it in a form of an SPV like we're doing at Mfuleni, the municipality will still have equity. A certain portion of the sales of water can still go to the municipality and service other issues that can be cross-subsidized. But in the main, the discipline is that the biggest quantum of the money from water sales, it must go to water assets and pay for the water charges. The very same thing that will have to happen around the question of electricity.
Is there a way for your department, Mr. Mahlobo, to work with perhaps COGTA and other departments? Because, you know, you mentioned the issues of leadership and how municipalities basically need to change how they run their affairs. And once that is done, of course, then we'll see that trickle-down effect when it comes to payment and just the administration of certain municipalities as well. But as the Department of Water and Sanitation, you don't necessarily have a say over the kind of leadership or how the municipality runs itself.
We're very pleased because His Excellency President Ramaphosa has prioritized the issues of governance and that local government must work. The President has appointed an interministerial committee that will have to look on issues of local government, where the Minister of COGT, our minister, and all of us, those deputy ministers responsible, we are actually working together. But we needed to start to move from talking about talks and start to walk the talk, because certain of these municipalities, they're in a dire situation, even in terms of the risk assessment and the impact. You can even see a number of metros are actually struggling. That's why President Ramaphosa made a decision to have a presidential working group that is just looking at an example of a eThekwini and where we can be in a position to intervene. We've spoken to COGT. Our view when it comes to water and technical divisions, nobody must be appointed in that particular space, because it's very scientific, it's engineering space, because you can't manage the water value chain if you don't have the appropriate qualification. Some of the operators, they've been working there for many years, will try to support them that within a period of 3 years, they must be certificated. In other words, there must be a recognition of prior learning. But if you don't want to learn, you'll have to step aside, because we cannot allow the infrastructure to collapse in our hands. And citizens, their right to have access to water, given in the Constitution, is being violated by a number of these municipalities. We'll insist, if municipalities don't come to the party, we shall intervene in the limited space in the legislation. The Section 63 intervention we're doing in Tshwane, we're doing somewhere in Machabeng, Emfuleni, and elsewhere. But we're also trying to bring some of the issues of amendment of the legislation, so it becomes much easier to intervene. But first, we'll support, then we'll intervene, and when you don't come to the party, we'll definitely have to take off.
A stern warning indeed. Mr. Mahlobo, thank you so much for talking to us this evening.